Today we're visiting with Hunter Education Coordinator Brian Schaefer, and we're going to go over some simple tips on how to clean your firearms before you put them away after the hunting seasons. I'm Mike Anderson with the North Dakota Game and Fish Department.
For a basic cleaning of your rifle, you just need a few items. I really recommend getting some type of vise to put your firearm in that just keeps it stable, protects your firearm from slipping, sliding, falling over, protects your optics well, and just really secures it well when you're in the process of cleaning it. So pushing the patches through or the brushes through, it's nice to have that secured tightly. A few other items you may need are a gun solvent of some kind. There's all kinds of brands out there. Pick what you'd like. Then also some firearm oil for after we use the solvent on the bore. So some other things I really recommend are a bore guide. It really keeps the inside of your magazine and chamber clean during the cleaning process. We don't want to add excessive amounts of solvent or oil inside of there just to keep our firearm functioning properly. Another item that you're going to need is some type of cleaning rod. For this type of firearm cleaning, very basic after the hunting season, we have a cleaning rod here. You can also use a caliber specific bore snake, which is a lot more basic, but I prefer to use a cleaning rod with patches just so I can, once or twice a year, really clean the barrel very well with some different solvents. So some other things, we have a brass brush here, caliber specific as well. And then we have some different types of picks or nylon brushes there for cleaning. We also have some Q-tips and rags just for cleaning those hard to reach spots and putting the final coat of oil on our firearm. So a little bit of an investment here to be able to maintain and clean your firearm properly. But in the grand scheme of things of being a hunter, maintaining that firearm is important for the longevity of it, for the accuracy of your firearm. Very important to take a half hour at the end of the hunting season and make sure your firearm's cleaned well. Yeah, so the first thing you're always going to want to do with your firearm before we start cleaning it, as always, unless we're in the field actively hunting, our firearm should be completely unloaded. So that's the first thing we would do is to verify that it's unloaded, remove the magazine, open that bolt, eventually pull the bolt on that firearm just for the cleaning process and for safety reasons. So once the firearm's completely unloaded, we place it in this vise, and then the first thing we would do is I like to put something over the stock of my firearm before I insert the bore guide. What I prefer to do with the solvent I'm using here today, we would run a few wet patches down and then let that soak for 5 or 10 minutes. Each solvent's a little bit different, so whatever the manufacturer you select, some of them require soaking for 10 or 15 minutes, all the way to an hour, depends on the manufacturer. But let that solvent do its job. And then once we do that, run a couple of those wet patches of solvent down. I like to use a brass brush and run that back and forth through the barrel several times, sometimes 6-12 times, to really try and loosen anything else that might be built up in there that the solvent's having a hard time breaking down. So once we put the brass brush down there 6 or 12 times. I like to put another wet patch down there with solvent just to collect anything else. And you should see the patches are still pretty dirty. So once we do that, we remove that. I like to run as many dry patches down there as I can until they come out clean. They're never going to come out completely clean. And so once you get them they're coming out consistently pretty clean. It may take 4, 5, 6, 10 patches for it to come out clean. Once that's complete, I like to clean the end of the muzzle with some solvent to make sure everything's cleaned up down there. If it's a threaded rifle, it's important to clean those threads, whether you have a muzzle brake on there or suppressor or just a thread cap, maintaining those threads, cleaning them, removing any residual powder burn or carbon buildup. Getting those cleaned up is important. Once we run all the solvent patch through there again after the brass brush, run one more patch with a lubricating oil on there down the barrel, just to provide some protection throughout the year. And then before putting away, I like to run one dry patch down there just to remove any excessive oil. And then I also add oil to the threads of the end of the muzzle if your rifle does have that, just to protect those as well. And once that's done, I like to clean the bolt, make sure everything's cleaned up there, especially the face of the bolt. Remove as much stuff from there as you can. You can use picks, Q-tips, a little bit of solvent. And then once that's complete and you're happy with that, I like to apply some gun oil to a rag and just wipe everything down to make sure all the metal parts are coated with a little bit of oil, just to protect it and the gun safe over the winter and into the early summertime. We make an investment into our firearms and we use them during the hunting seasons. It's important that you take care of them. It's just like anything else. You have any other tool you have in your home, your motor vehicle, anything. Maintaining and cleaning your firearms is important so they function when you need them to function, when we're out in the field, and they function safely. We want to make sure the bolts are cleaned, the barrels are cleaned. I go as far as protecting the barrel of my firearms when I'm out in the field by using some electrical tape to cover the end of the barrel. Prevents moisture from getting in there, prevents dirt and grime getting in there, does not impact accuracy at all. So a good cleaning like this, minimum once a year after hunting season, is a good idea as a hunter. I recommend doing it probably more often than that if you shoot a lot. But one thing to remember, after you do clean a barrel really well like this, you need to fire a couple fouling shots before you really zero in your rifle for the hunting season, because it will change your point of impact slightly. So the first thing you do when you're going to clean your shotgun after hunting season, as always, the firearm should be unloaded with the action open when we're not in the field hunting. And so we verify that with a visual inspection of both the magazine and the chamber. And I highly recommend you do that every time you pick up a firearm. And then once you do that, I like to disassemble the firearm following manufacturer's suggested way of doing that. Takes a couple times if it's a new firearm to learn how yours function, how it comes apart and gets back together. But once you figure it out, it's pretty simple. Break it down into the basic parts here. And the first thing I like to do is use the bore snake. I apply some solvent to the front of it and then some lubricating oil to the back end of it. And from the chamber end of the barrel, I slide the bore snake down there and then pull that through 2, 3, 4 times until the barrel is clean. And the best way to check to see how clean the barrel is you can look through it at a bright light and you can see how clean it is. Once you're satisfied with how clean it is, it should be super shiny in there. You can remove the choke tube. And it's important to remove the choke tube. Again, use some solvent on a rag and clean the threads of the choke tube to make sure you're getting all of that out of there. And then apply a little bit of lubricating oil to those threads, insert it back into the end of the barrel, just to make sure you're maintaining the end of the firearm. It's important to do that because if you don't do that on a regular basis, eventually those choke tubes could get seized in there, and then you're going to need a gunsmith to get them removed. And so going to switch choke tubes from turkey season to dove season, it's important you have that ability to do that. So critical step if your firearm doesn't have a fixed choke tube. Once you clean everything up with the solvent on a rag, I like to get a clean rag, apply some lubricating oil to it, and just wipe everything down in there and make sure everything gets coated with a light coating of oil, and that just prevents rust on anything on internal moving parts. You can apply a little bit of oil to some of those moving parts if you'd like, but I try and do that with the rag just to minimize the amount of oil that we're applying on the internal side of the internal part of the firearm. And then you just put it back together the way you took it apart. And then once you're done with that, I like to just, again, apply a little bit of oil to everything, all the moving parts as we're putting it back together, and then give it one good wipe down, and don't touch any of the metal parts as you're putting it back into the safe, just to maintain that coating of light oil on the firearm before it goes back in the safe. So just like our rifles, it's important with our shotguns that at the end of the year we take some time. It only takes a little bit of a half hour of time maybe to clean our firearm well and protect it for generations to come. It's a little bit easier to clean than a rifle, I'd say, less technical, but just as important. And specifically due to the fact that, especially if you're an upland bird hunter, going through cattails late season, Dust, dirt gets in there, and we tend to shoot our shotguns a lot more throughout a season. And so we get a lot more buildup of burnt gunpowder, and they seem to get dirtier throughout the year. So a little bit easier than a rifle, but just as important to keep your shotgun clean and functioning properly. I'm not a gunsmith, not an expert when it comes to these things. This is just kind of how I do things to maintain my firearms after hunting season, during hunting season. And firearms are a big investment, and quite often firearms are handed down from generation to generation. So it's important to maintain the bore of the firearm, the exterior of the firearm,